Well, a crisis is reported to be brewing at the Code of Conduct Tribunal over a power tussle between embattled former chairman Danladi Umar and the newly appointed replacement Maina Sara Kogo. Both men are said to be asserting their authority over the leadership of the tribunal. Two officials are said to have separately visited the tribunal and engaged with its staff, even as there remains no clear directive regarding who is officially in charge. President Bola Tinubu has appointed Kogo as the new chairman of the Code of Conduct Tribunal in July. First, Baba Issa is a lawyer, and he joins us now to delve into this discussion about the leadership crisis going on in the department. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. First, Baba Issa.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's get into the origins of the issue. Could you maybe explain to us in layman's terms exactly how this crisis of leadership started within the Code of Conduct Bureau? It's reportedly caused a lot of ethnic and religious tension within the ministry and division. Could you tell us more?
Well, from your summary or your intro, you have already captured the meat of the issue. I think we first of all have to understand that the chairman of the Code of Conduct Tribunal enjoyed some kind of tenure that is supposed to be dealt with when he's 70 years, and the present chairman is not the chairman like the other guy that was removed by the Senate is not up to 70 years. That's the first point. Then in July, the president now appointed Kogo as his replacement. Now, I believe that when the president and his handlers or his advisors discovered that they cannot name a replacement when the present occupant of that office has not one been removed according to the provisions of the Constitution. Now, the matter was taken to the Senate, or the Senate delved into the matter to try to, make good of something that was already bad by trying to remove Danladi Umar. And we are all aware of the gaffe of the Senate where they procedurally removed him wrongly, and they later corrected that procedural error in removing him. So the real question now is that at the time when the president appointed a replacement for Danladi Umar, was Danladi Umar still the chairman of the CCT? The answer, constitutionally speaking, is yes. Because at that time, Danladi Umar hasn't been removed, at least according to the dictates of the Constitution. So until he was properly removed, you cannot name his replacement. Now that the Senate have come in and removed him, I don't know whether the House of Reps have concurred, because the Constitution provides for a concurrence by the House of Representatives. So if the House of Reps have concurred to the removal of the CCT chairman by the Senate, I think what the president should do now to avoid all this higgledy-piggledy is to appoint, I don't want to use the word reappoint, to appoint a replacement of the removed CCT chairman. That is, if the Senate and the House of Reps have done it properly as spelled out by the Constitution. But I don't think, legally speaking, that the appointment of Kogo in July, when the Senate had not removed Danladi Umar, is justifiable under our Constitution. That is not, to my mind, my opinion, that is not the proper appointment. But now that the coast has been cleared, the Senate has invoked the relevant section of the Constitution to remove Danladi Umar. And I believe if the House have conceded to that or concurred to that, then the president can simply make an appointment now, call it reappointment if you like, but it should be a proper appointment now, not the one that happened in July. That cannot stand, because you can't have an appointment of a replacement before you have a removal that happened just a few weeks ago.
But seeing as the Senate has actually removed Danladi Umar, should he actually still be asserting his authority over the leadership of the tribunal? Isn't he acting against the law by doing so?
Yes, at this point, yes. At this point, yes. You know, there are two things. We talk about the legal confusion and we now talk about the attitude of Umar towards his removal. I heard he has even challenged it in court. Maybe he should step aside to allow the court to determine it one way or the other to see whether he was properly removed or not. But now that the Senate, after their first procedural error, they corrected it, and if the House of Reps have concurred, then Danladi Umar has no business, with all due respect, parading himself as a chairman of CCT. If the Senate had not done that, banking only on the appointment of Kogo as his replacement, then I would think that Danladi Umar will be well within his right to say that I am still the chairman of CCT, because the Senate and the House of Reps, as at then, when the president appointed his replacement in July, had not properly removed him. But now that that constitutional issues have been dealt with in his removal, I don't see any reason why he should still be asserting or laying claim to an office that is no longer his, so to speak. But my first submission concerning the president appointing Kogo now is because there's a legal confusion concerning his appointment in July. It doesn't make sense, even to the layman on the street, you don't have to be a lawyer, that he was appointed in July and the Senate purportedly, or the Senate properly removed Danladi just a few weeks ago. So if the Senate removed Danladi just a few weeks ago, the president should appoint his replacement now and not begin to, hold on to the appointment he made in July. But as for Danladi should have no business in that office again, not based on the appointment of the president in July, but based on his removal by the Senate, awaiting concurrence, or if concurrence has been given, by the House of Representatives. As long as that is done and done properly, Danladi Umar is no longer the CCT chairman.
And what does this say actually about the anti-graft agency and their ability to handle their own internal issues and external issues if, they can't really serve the people amidst their own leadership crisis? What's your opinion on this?
Well, it's bad optics. It's bad. That's why we are here. If all these were handled properly, we would not be talking, we would not be having need for TV show. It's bad optics. It presents a kind of shambolic inner workings of our anti-graft agencies. It shows a kind of confusion between the executive understanding of the extent of their powers. It also shows a lot of confusion about the Senate's or the National Assembly understanding of the workings of the procedures they need to take to, do things like this. So it's really bad optics. It doesn't show decency. It doesn't show adherence to rule of law. It doesn't show that they even take us seriously. Because it started with the Senate, the other day, when they removed him based on Section 157 of the Constitution, we didn't even deal with the removal of the CCT chairman. They have to come back again and remove him or remove him properly through the fifth schedule of the Constitution. So why all this confusion? And why I'm surprised that the president appointed the replacement when he was not even removed. So it's really, really bad optics. It doesn't tell well of us at all. We should be able to, or they should be able to, we deserve to see them put their house together to show that they know what they are doing, and it builds public confidence in our institutions. But this now, it's a fiasco, it's laughable, and it does not instill public confidence in the ordinary Nigerian working on the street in our public institutions. It's sad.
So what lessons would you say can be learned from this whole saga, and how do we prevent such going forward?
I just think that the first, if not the only lesson, is public officers, public officials, elected, appointed, should take their job seriously and take us seriously. Before you make public pronouncements, before you take actions that affect our public institutions and affects us as a people, you should be careful to dot the I's, cross the T's, and don't present us as a laughing stock before the international community, number one. And Nigeria we are struggling, to build confidence in our public institutions, and things like this don't help. So, as I said, the president, before announcing a replacement, he has an AGF. How can you announce a replacement to an office when the occupant of that office has not properly been removed? So that's the first lesson. Are all the public officials doing their work well within the ambit of the law? They should take themselves seriously, take us seriously, take their work seriously. Then I don't think we're going to be held up in this kind of fiasco in public. If everybody who has been entrusted with public office takes his or her job seriously and take the people seriously, if we don't get that from our public officials, then we are going to be demoralized, so demoralized. It's not going to be good for public confidence in our public institution.
Well, it seems that we actually hope that the individuals in the Code of Conduct Bureau are listening. But could you, let me just backtrack a little bit to ask about resolutions. There is a commissioner who says, it says that the most senior of the federal commissioners who assumes the chairmanship role as stipulated in the 2019 circular. This is actually a circular from the Code of Conduct Bureau. The most senior of the federal commissioners, as stipulated in the 2019 circular, directing all heads of extra ministerial agencies and departments without any form of discretion, ordering them to hand over to the next most senior officer of the establishment. Who is the next most senior officer in this whole story?
Well, I think I wouldn't know that by heart now, but I think they have somebody that is like in the CCT that is like the chief registrar in the normal court, who is like a federal commissioner. I think that should be the person that is the most senior officer, like a second in command to the CCT. But it is a judicial, it's not an executive position. It's a judicial position where the head of the court, the chairman, is like a judge, So it is difficult to ask if you are removing, like, say, the CGN. It is say, okay, the senior justice, who is also a justice, they are brothers, to take over. But in this case, it's just a person, just a chairman who occupies that position, sits alone. So it is difficult to pinpoint and say anybody who is at a clerk level can just walk into his shoes and become the CCT chairman and start hearing cases that come before him. So it's not that easy to pinpoint who can easily walk into the shoe of the CCT chairman, which is a judicial position. It's not like the case where you have several justices of the Supreme Court or several justices of the Court of Appeal, where you say, okay, the president of the Court of Appeal is stepping down or the CGN is stepping down. Then a broader justice can step in. This is not the position, so it's a little dicey and tricky. The proper thing to do is when the chairman is no longer capable to execute the functions of that office, he should be removed properly and a proper replacement should be appointed to take over so that we don't get into this logjam of who is supposed to be take over and who is supposed to take over.
First, Baba Issa, legal practitioner, thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.